Are you going to get us set up with some intro music?
No. So let's get into, let's not joke.
Someone have a hard time doing that.
Yeah. So let's get into more of, I guess, of your story, how you got into building, how you are now CEO, president of R&R Build Design, and I guess your background. So where you started, where you came from, how you got to where you are now.
Do you want the real story or the fake story?
Both.
All right. The real story is my father tricked me into joining the business.
That's amazing.
No. Sorry. So how I got into construction, essentially family business.
Mm-hmm.
My dad started R&R Enterprises in 1980. Started out as a carpet cleaning and maintenance style business, and then slowly grew over the years into more maintenance and repairs, and then that turned into remodeling. And essentially from my end growing up, I've grown up in the business the entire time. Used to play in the office as a kid, then later was dropped off on job sites to sweep floors, pick up cigarette butts, and just do general cleanup. And then through high school, I think, starting around 14, I started working in a custom mill shop, pulling nails, sweeping floors out of the Heart Pine, pulling nails again. Then I upgraded from pulling nails to running boards through a planer, and then through a shaper, and then put on the job site and working with different finish trim carpenters to learn finish trim work. A lot more sweeping floors and watching when I was learning finish trim, and then moved on to working with a electrical contractor. So I worked as a helper for an electrician for about a year, and worked with a landscape architect, doing a lot of the drafting for him on the back end for 3 months. And then college. Went to college and was planning on doing something completely different than construction, and decided construction was actually not as bad, so changed my path about halfway through and decided that construction was the route that I was going to take. So long story to get to 2007, came back to join R&R and started off as a superintendent, worked my way up to project manager, estimator, and ultimately owner of the company in around 2013. So
very cool.
The long and the short.
Yeah. So you joined 2007 when,
2007, right when everything crashed.
Yeah.
Fortunately for us, silver lining in every story, my dad built one spec home when I was 8 years old, and we wound up moving into it for 4 years. And he decided that spec houses were not his market, and continued on with remodeling and maintenance and insurance work at that time. So when the crash came, we weren't left with a lot of houses on the ground. All of our work was remodels, pre-sold, had customers for them, and then we really did not slow down during those 2 years. Or the end of 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, our workflow was fairly steady compared to most people.
It was mostly remodeling or?
Almost 100% remodeling. But again, our
damages.
Water damages and different items, but some of our remodels, the one that I first came back to was I think it was about a 2,600 square foot addition onto a house basically we took a old craftsman style house and added a mirror image of that house onto the backside. So from all practical standpoints, it was a brand new house that was attached to an old house. So it was just like a ground up build. And that was the first project that I worked on.
Very cool. So your time at Auburn, you're an Auburn grad.
Auburn grad, War Eagle.
So we have problems. I don't know. Since I went to UGA, but it hasn't been a problem for me in the recent past, but whatever. So the jobs that we're doing now, they're remodeling, some new construction out of the ground with some of the projects that we're doing. What projects are you wanting to do, like moving forward? What are you looking to take the company direction in?
So the company direction that we're trying to move into is more of the custom design build. For the longest time, we've done a whole gamut of construction, from the insurance repair where we did the water, fire, storm, emergency service. Then we did the repairs. We were also selling custom design, custom homes, custom remodels, kitchens, bathrooms, full additions, and new construction. The difficult part with doing all of that is you're just pulled in too many different directions, and you can't really focus in and kind of hone your craft when you're using that kind of shotgun effect to utilize the market that you're in. So in the recent years, we have focused more on design build, trying to get more intent on design first, getting full set of plans, and really thinking through a job before we start a job, versus jumping into a job and building out that job as we go.
Hired an interior designer.
We hired an interior designer recently. In the last several years, I've started doing a lot of the design work myself, along with working with other local architects and other designers in the area. But the direction that we're trying to move into, or the direction that we're moving into, is the custom home, new builds, large additions, full house renovations, a little bit larger scale, more on the high-end side of construction, really paying attention to our water management, air management, along with just better, cleaner details on the interior.
Yeah, because, I mean, since you came back and we've been doing remodeling, water restoration, fire, storm restoration, we've seen leaks. We've seen where those water intrusions happen. And so really having that experience, it pays dividends for what we do now and how to attack this.
It pays huge dividends. So I wouldn't trade my experience with water mitigation, and all of the restoration and repairs that we've done. It's really given myself a tremendous amount of insight onto what people do wrong and how much damage it can cause when you're not doing things correctly. And my dad used to have a saying with several things that it's either 100% right or it's 100% wrong. A lot of these areas, when you're talking about waterproofing, flashing details, and those items, they're one of those, it's either wrong or it's right. And there's an awful lot of people who do them wrong. So focusing in on best building practices, verifying our details, making sure that our guys know exactly what they're supposed to be doing, not letting our guys that are our in-house trades guys or our subcontractors just go out to a job and do whatever they want to do, or this is how we've always done it. More of that management, that oversight, and verifying that they are doing it correctly, and in turn we take ownership of those jobs. So if there's a failure or something that goes wrong, we'll stand behind it. The reason we're able to stand behind our work is because we verify and we know that it's correct. Not that mistakes don't happen, but they're minimal.
Yeah, and that's why we focus so much on social media, on some of that stuff. It might be very boring, but that stuff is incredibly important and important to get right.
Yes.
It's either 100% right or 100% wrong.
That's correct.
So that's why some of the, as Lauren would say, snooze alert posts sometimes throw up on Instagram.
Yes, and so they're not as much fun. And from a homeowner standpoint, it's not as much fun to do a repair that you weren't anticipating doing.
Right.
Or we've had several jobs where we've had to do a lot of corrective work that is then unseen. By the time we leave, the house is sound, so they're sleeping better at night because they're not concerned that their house is settling or that the roof is going to fall in or that they've got a massive leak somewhere. But their house looks exactly like it did when we started. Or look, they didn't get improvements. They didn't get a new kitchen. They didn't get a new bathroom. They didn't get this. We ripped off the exterior and we put it back on. We dug up the entire outside of the house, put piers in, and then put everything back. So those items and their cost, I mean, they cost a tremendous amount of money to make those repairs. So getting a job on the front end and spending a little bit more money up front to have it done correctly it can save you a lot of money down the road.
Right. I don't have any more questions. I don't know if you want to go over something about why we're starting the podcast, what we're anticipating trying to do with the podcast, educating, informing, and we're connecting with
We're starting this podcast because Jeff Lanzer is making me do a podcast and trying to push our social media.
Yes.
He knows that he's going to have to clip that out now.
Nope. It's in there.
The reason for starting the podcast is to try and get the information out, share what we know, share our experience, share the design failures that we've seen, the way that we've corrected those, and then share the building science practices that we're trying to move towards, and really just to inform our customer base, our friends, anybody who's interested or wants to listen, just what are things that you need to be looking for during construction. Hopefully this podcast can help somebody that's, not our customer, but they're having a home built and gives them a little bit of insight into what they need to be looking for. Hopefully it inspires some of our competition or other people to build better. There's I think plenty of contractors out there who intend on doing a good job, but they're moving to the next one, and the house that they built may have been sold, and the problem didn't arise until 5 or 10 years after they built the house, which they don't get a phone call back. They're not the ones that are coming back in to fix it because they're new construction or they're known for new construction. They're not known for repairs. The overall intent of this podcast is just to inform and hopefully help other people.
Yes, and to connect with our followers. And so you start asking questions on the front end and really trying to push, again, when you're thinking about doing a remodel or anything like that, to slow down at the front end. Because slowing down at the front end is you get all that planning and you get your details correct. And so when you go into actually breaking ground or job starting, everything's smooth and everything's correct, and it can go and the work can be completed efficiently.
Correct. And I think to help explain some of that, so typically what happens is we'll have somebody that will call us and want to start a renovation or remodel. And they've been thinking about this for 6 months, a year, however long. Most people don't just out of the blue say, I'm going to go do a remodel. So they've got a lot of time invested in their project and what they think they want for their project. And then they come to us and they're wanting to get started. Yeah. And we've made this mistake in the past of, we can get started. Sure. We'll jump on that as fast as we can. But it's at a detriment to the job, because once the job starts, the job slows down because decisions aren't made. It puts pressure on the homeowner to make a quick decision that they don't have adequate time to think through. So slowing down in the front end, even though you've been thinking about it for 6 months, getting everything laid out and taking another 2 to 3 months to get your project set up correctly will A, speed up the construction, and B, get you the job that you're anticipating.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, we've been recording for 18 minutes.
It's the shortest podcast in the history of podcasts.
I don't think so. I think it's a solid, but I mean, we can keep going if you would like to.
I mean, all the ones that I enjoy are like 3 hours long.
You got to pick up gymnast
I
at 5:30.
I have a all-star gymnast who is getting released at 5:30 along with 3 of her friends, and none of them can drive, so I still have to pick them up.
Right.
Fortunately, I've got 8 years before she'll be driving. At the same time, that's scary. I've got 8 years before she'll be driving.
Right. So when you joined R&R 2007,
Yes.
you just graduated college, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So how long until you married your wife?
Ooh, Jeff, put me on the spot. So we got married in 2011.
Are we going to have your wife fact check
We're
that?
going to have to fact check that.
Okay.
So, no, 10 years. Yeah, 10 years this year. So that would be correct. 2011.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
October 21st, 2011.
Lori K is listening to this. Please fact check
Please fact check.
and let us know.
I can look up the date and make sure that the date is correct. But it was 2011. So yes, my wife and I got married in 2011. She also is an Auburn grad, War Eagle. Not to say that I have anything against Georgia. I've hired 2 Georgia
Yes.
graduates,
Mm-hmm.
so can't hate them that much.
Yeah.
So anyway, but
And then, so you got married 2011, but we're waiting on that fact check. And now you have 4 kids.
and now I have 4 kids. That's correct. So you can do the math. 4 kids in 10 years,
Yeah.
spanning from 8 years old, will be 9 this year, 6, 5, and just turned 2. So Lucy Claire, Maggie, Marshall, and Jay.
Yep. And then Rick, your brother, has 3 now.
My brother has 3, and he's. I tried to warn him, but he's decided to follow my route and stack them all in there. He's got 3. Henry is, I believe, turning 4. Cece is 2, and Henry is probably 6 months, 8 months now, somewhere around there.
We'll fact check
We'll
that
fact
too.
check that too. I'm not responsible for remembering his kids' birthdays.
That's true.
So
we have a small McMillan army.
we do. We are. There's a huge labor shortage, and we are trying to correct that.
Yep.
By producing our own labor force that
Mhm.
will take 18 years to groom, but I think we can get there.
Yep.
But speaking of Rick, so Rick, my younger brother, he graduated from Southern Poly with a construction engineering degree. He went to work for a larger commercial contractor, New South, and worked for New South for 6 years, I believe, before I coaxed him into coming back to residential. But he's got a lot of experience on the commercial side, a lot of experience in large builds, and then just same as me growing up. Both of us grew up in the office around the construction sites, sweeping floors. Our dad was very good at putting us with different trades growing up. One that Rick took on was welding, so he learned to weld early on. He also worked with a framer early on. So it was fun growing up and seeing those getting to work in those different trades and having those opportunities. I found out later in life that my dad was paying all of the subcontractors that we were working for to let us work for those subcontractors, which is kind of funny, but a good deal for them. And most of them worked for him, so he paid us directly. They got to collect on the labor, so it was kind of a win-win for them.
Wow.
And we got the experience. So
That's pretty great.
yeah,
But it's amazing that y'all both grew up in it. You were the one that wanted to go a different way,
correct.
and then Rick did go a different way
Correct.
with the intention of coming back.
Yes. Yeah. So Rick had more of when he left to go to college, he was planning on coming back. When I left to go to college, I had no intentions of coming back. I didn't want to come back to Carrollton. Didn't want to come back to R&R. I'd had enough of it, and I wanted to go do something else. Took a little bit of growing up, and then also just some life experience to realize that it wasn't so bad.
Yeah. I guess Auburn did whip you into shape there.
It did do that.
Not too bad.
And then Rick, he's 5 years younger than I am. So by the time I was getting towards the end of my college career, which was slightly extended, but I had a good time, he was just moving into college in his career. And so, he got to see kind of my transition and what I went through. And then obviously he was the baby, the golden child is what we called him. So I think he had it a little bit easier than I did growing up.
But that's amazing.
Yes.
Rick the golden child.
So what about you, Jeff? So tell the story on how I swindled you into staying and working with me.
Ah, man.
Because you were going to be an accountant. I mean,
Yeah.
you were on your way to be a CPA.
So I was on my way, to get my CPA. And then Robert over here said, "But what about this?" And I said, "Yes, okay, I'll join." No. So I went to UGA. I got my finance degree from UGA.
And then you went where?
Online, so it doesn't really count.
It does
but
count.
I got a secondary bachelor's in accounting at Auburn, unfortunately.
War Eagle.
Or fortunately. And so I was planning on getting my CPA and going to work for an accounting firm in Atlanta. That was my end goal. And then Robert over here convinced me to stay and said, "Hey, we're pretty cool. We're doing some pretty awesome things. We're trying to grow the company. We're trying to move in this direction with our builds and what we're trying to do and push." So it seemed like a great opportunity to jump in, help with the marketing side of things, help with the pre-construction side of things. And so he had a pretty fair argument to make in order to keep me here. But
I think we did pretty good. I mean, you left out the part that I offered you a part-time job while you were in school.
That's very true.
But-
Okay, so I did graduate from UGA. Literally 3 days after I graduated, I started here at part-time, full-time, kind of both. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was actually
initially.
full-time. Yeah.
Full-time initially at the front office, helping Lauren with data entry. And then I talked him into letting me go and take classes at night online. And so I took classes online at Auburn while I was working here. Yes. And so that was...
But the initial job was more or less to get you through
Right.
accounting and
Yep.
and get you to where you were, the path that you were on. And somewhere along the line, he decided that construction is way more fun than sitting in a cubicle doing crunching numbers.
Yeah. Construction is way more fun.
And then you got married. You've been
Yeah.
I don't want to say recently. You've been married, what, 2 years now?
No.
3 years?
You're
4
going to
years?
put me on the spot now.
Yes.
Yeah, 4 years.
4 years?
4 years.
Jeez.
So 4 years, got married 2017. So I graduated from UGA, started my job here 3 days later, bought a house in 2 months, and then married Becca, my wife, in 4 months after
That's
that.
right.
So
Sorry,
March bought the house, April got married.
Sorry, my timeline was a little off. You and Becca got married quickly after college.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, because we were engaged in college.
That's
and then
right.
got married,
Okay.
Yeah.
And you bought a townhouse,
Better.
not a house.
Uh,
And it was
Whatever.
it's a townhouse that you asked me to go look at with you, and
You said
although
no.
you did good, you wound up doing good, but
Right.
I told you I would not buy that if I were
Right.
you. But it worked out in your favor. You were able to sell it, get out of it, and then roll that into a new house that is
Yep.
not attached to other people,
That is not attached to other people.
that has parking.
It has a driveway and no HOA. HOA can be a problem. But yeah, that's the story of me and how I got here and how I am a co-host. Co-host of this podcast. That
Possibly
is
the host.
possibly the host. I think it could be a fair statement that I could be a host and you are the main source. You're the main entertainment.
The source of information.
Yeah.
But I guess so. I mean, we've talked about myself. We've talked about you. We've talked about my brother. So we've also got Lauren Nist, who is our front office manager, project accountant. She handles everything from data entry to billing to accounts receivables, payables,
To keeping us all in check.
trying to keep us all in check. It's kind of hard. Then we have Delaney Helton, who joined us this year.
Last year.
Technically last year.
Technically
About 6 months now, as a interior designer. Really talented. Another UGA grad. I'm gonna have to start pulling from people from Auburn, but anyway, the UGA is working out right now.
Going the wrong way.
So that's kind of our office staff, and then we've got a field staff of multiple carpenters, really some really good tradesmen, well-rounded. Then we've got some really good painters in house, and just some general laborers, along with all of our kind of subcontractors that we work with.
Yeah. So talk about what we're looking to do with our shop, because we posted a couple things on that on Instagram, and then the front of our building, what we're kind of doing. Let's go over the shop first, our intentions with that, and why. Because we currently house all of our equipment, and our millwork shop that Robert was referring to back in the day was over at a warehouse about 5 minutes away from our office.
Yes.
So why we're transitioning that to our current office and shop.
Yeah. So we've got we've got a warehouse or a mill shop, where we have the ability to produce, different moldings, trims, cabinets if we need to. We've had a cabinet company at one point in time. But the main reason for moving the shop from the current location over to our office, one is for efficiencies, and two is just to be able to stay on top of the equipment. One of the big problems that we have is the shop was being used on a fairly regular basis, but there wasn't somebody there day to day that could maintain the equipment or make sure that everything was in working order. And inevitably, we would go over there and have to fix, repair, do something. So, moving the shop to our current location, we've got Jeffrey Driver, who's going to be kind of our shop manager. Who's going to be in the shop full time. So any custom moldings, any type of custom projects that we run across, we'll have one person kind of dedicated to that, who's working that 100% of the time, which will help us in the field where we're not pulling guys back and forth and kind of in the shop, out of the shop, in the shop, out of the shop. And also just to have, equipment and those type of things, one person responsible for that. And then the front of our building, so we moved into our new office in 2013, beginning in 2014.
Right.
And I've always hated the way that the office looked on the exterior. But like everyone else, we were working on a budget, and we had to finish out the inside, get our interior space ready, and finally made the decision that it's time to correct some of the issues we were having with the front of the building, along with aesthetically making it more pleasing and more in line with the type of work that we're producing.
Yeah. So what issues were we seeing?
So we were seeing some water issues that were quite a nuisance. Unfortunately, when we moved into our current building, so it is a typical metal frame, metal building, 40 by 150, I think. We finished out an area that's I think 50 by 40, roughly. And when we first moved in to handle some of the exterior envelope and sealing that, and also trying to offer a better insulation package, we used spray foam, and we removed all the insulation that was already existing and sprayed directly up against the metal sheeting on the exterior, which was fine for a long time until we started developing some leaks, and then that presented a problem with locating the leaks, and B, repairing the leaks without messing up our exterior or
Everything.
our envelope.
Yeah.
So the way to correct that, a couple options. Could have pulled all the metal off the front of the building, ripped off all the insulation, reworked all of the insulation, and put a new exterior facade on there. Instead of doing that, we are framing essentially another exterior facade in front of our building. So we're building a shell around our building to protect it. And in doing that, we're controlling some of the water issues that we had at the ground level, controlling the water issues that we had at the windows and the doors and the roof, and accomplishing that through just some newer, I guess, relatively newer products. So we're using the Huber Zip system as the exterior sheathing. So that's going to be our main control layer. We're also going with a duration moldings. So we're going to do a duration product on the exterior that will be a shiplap and a combination of some other molding choices. And I believe we have decided now that we're going to use a Ipe trim for all of the windows and doors, which makes me happy because I wanted to do an Ipe rain screen from the beginning.
Yeah.
And my brother...
So we like Ipe.
We do love Ipe. And we love materials and products that hold up and last.
Right.
Is why we love them. We want to show up to a project and do your project, and then that product that we put on last. I don't want to come back in a year and there be rot, or 2 years and there's some rot. We would rather go ahead and spend some money up front so that you have a product that will last long term. Now, there's no such thing as 100% maintenance free, but there is a lot of good options that will give you a low maintenance down the road.
Right.
It's like anything in life. You pay now or pay later.
Right. So let's, we don't have much time left, but let's talk about the spray foam.
Spray foam.
And why maybe some builders are transitioning away from it. I know this is a big point for Nick Schiffer with NS Builders, that he's transitioning away from doing spray foam in any of his buildings. But maybe you can talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. So
benefits,
pros,
cons.
So the spray foam, it's like a lot of products that come and go in the building industry. So it was kind of the silver bullet. 2007, when I started back, spray foam it'd been around, but it wasn't heavily used, but it was starting to become more and more frequently used. So we started incorporating it into some of our jobs. It's excellent for insulation, offered some, especially with closed cell spray foam, offered some structural, additional structural strength, air sealing. There's just a lot of things that it was doing that were good for the industry. Some of the downsides, some of the off-gassing. If the product is not mixed correctly, it can fail and can off-gas forever, or it will turn loose and actually release from the wall. So there's a lot of downsides that we've discovered or we've found over the years with spray foam. But the biggest issue that I've found with spray foam is it reduces your tolerance for mistakes to nothing.
Yeah.
So if you have your exterior sprayed with spray foam and your flashing details are not correct, your wall will rot out, and it will rot out fast, and it will be an absolute mess by the time you found it.
Like one of the jobs that we completed recently.
Correct. We had a job in 2018 that was it was a large job, and it was a new construction home that was built. I think the house was 4 years old by the time we got there. When we were called in, there was just a few water spots on the ceiling. Now, granted, this ceiling, there was a patio above the ceiling. So if you have a patio or a roof over a finished space, it's always a tricky spot anyway. They're hard to get right. But this one in particular, there were several things that were wrong with it that we found after we started tearing it apart. But the point of what we're getting at is it wasn't showing up.
Right.
And it only took 4 years for the entire roof system to have to be ripped off, for the entire exterior facade to be ripped off. Almost all of the framing pulled off. All the sheathing was gone. It had gotten from the roof to the walls, and it just started to get into the actual truss floor system down below. Fortunately, it had not gotten too far into that, and we had our engineer look at some different repairs, and we're able to repair a few of the trusses that were damaged on the inside, or just on the edge of the truss. But that job and a couple of other ones prior to that really showed us that, your flashing details are incredibly important.
Correct.
One of the bigger ones that I learned on window flashing was another project that we were involved with. Didn't start off as a window repair. It was a bathroom remodel, and while we were working, we noticed an issue with a window in the garage. So we went to explore, we think there's an issue, we should probably look into it. Once we looked into it, we realized that there was 2 to 3 feet of rot all the way around the window. And
all the way, so
all the way around. So top, bottom, sides.
Wow.
And it started getting into the studs. And so, the studs we had to replace the studs, and ultimately what wound up happening is we removed every single window in the home. We removed all of the siding on the home. We removed all of the OSB on the home, and we removed all of the insulation. And probably 50% of the framing that was in direct contact with those windows, and had to replace it. And again, these are things that the homeowner was not anticipating. This is something they were not planning. And it is a very large expense to do this. Not only does it cost money to do it the first time, it costs 3 times the amount to tear it off, keep your house in somewhat conditioned space and livable while you're doing all of this, and then putting everything back.
Right.
So getting those details correct was solidified in my head early on in my career, and that's why we have always looked for the best practices, the best products, and then just verification. You have to check. And so one of our things is just always checking, always making sure that we're setting things up correctly. And if they're not, we tear them out and you put them back because it's not worth the risk.
Right. To go back to that original job, 4 or 5 year old house that you're essentially having to rebuild a whole wing of because of a couple water spots in the ceiling. That
turned into the whole front facade of the house being ripped off, 2 roofs being ripped off, it was a mess.
Right. And so that was 100% wrong on that one.
100% wrong.
Yeah, that's why getting details right on the front end, having that plan going in, knowing that the builder that you're going with cares about those details and is almost excited about that. Where, here at R&R, we nerd out on that sometimes with new information, new building practices, obviously that are time tested. For example, like the Huber Zip system, something that's extremely time tested. That's why we're putting it on the front of our building. That's why we put it in our clients' homes. Do you have any other questions or anything else you would like to talk about?
I think that's a good start for our first podcast.
Yeah, at least a warm up.
I mean, yeah, one that's not supposed to go live.
Yeah, I think I might take some cuts from this and put it up there, and just say like, "What do y'all think?" Because there was some good stuff there. We really got into some details.
Get a little into it. We can get way further in the weeds on some other stuff. We were hitting pretty high level.
Yeah. And we'll probably get into that on other podcasts, where either some details or something that we're doing at one of our jobs and explaining kind of why we do that. And again, that's why we're doing this podcast, is so
Absolutely.
We can educate.
We also are really looking forward to all the negative comments that come flying our way.
Yeah.
And
Huber Zip system
how wrong we are.
It's not right. You shouldn't build with that. You should flash the bottom of your windows. and use
Yeah.
OSB.
Auburn's terrible. So is Georgia. Roll Tide.
Yeah, that would be the worst comment that we could possibly get. All the other trash is okay.
Yeah.
Throw it at us.
So.
Let's hear it.
All right. We're going to cut.
Yeah, so that is
Signing
Robert
off.
and Jeff signing off. We'll see y'all next time.
WSB 223. See you tomorrow, 9:30 a.m.
That was good.
on The Burt Show.
Well, not on the Burt Show? Okay. All right, we're done.